hell is this?
Crawford's voice cut through the ER hallway. He looked Naomi Turner up and down with utter disgust.
No, 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 no. Just standing there soils this place.
Sir, I'm the ER nurse on shift.
I don't need your badge. I want you out.
He stepped closer.
You disgust me. Get out before your germs infect my patients.
Naomi didn't flinch, didn't blink.
I'm assigned here, sir.
Assigned? You look more like a cleaner than a scalping handler. Get off my floor before I drag you out myself.
She stepped back, gently. Then the doors slammed open. Soldiers in dress uniforms marched in. The first one looked Crawford in the eye and said two words that turned his face white. His legs gave out. That was just the beginning. 5:45 in the morning. The sky over St. Edmund Regional Medical Center was still bruised purple, not yet ready for daylight. The parking lot was half empty. A thin fog clung to the asphalt, like it didn't want to let go. A dark blue sedan pulled into the same spot it always did. Third row, far left corner, close to the side entrance. Naomi Turner killed the engine and sat there for a second. Just 1 second. She wrapped both hands around her thermos, cheap metal, dented on one side, still warm. The coffee inside was black, no sugar. Old habit from a place where sugar was a luxury and sleep was a rumor. Her scrubs were already on, lanyard clipped to her chest, badge photo slightly faded from 14 months of daily use. On the dashboard, taped just below the rearview mirror, was a small photograph, creased at the edges, sun-bleached. 6 soldiers in dusty fatigues, standing in front of a mud-colored wall, mountains behind them. Naomi in the center, arms crossed, a medical bag slung over one shoulder. She was younger in that photo, thinner. Her eyes looked different, the kind of eyes that had already seen things most people only read about. She didn't look at the photo this morning. She never needed to. She knew every face in it by heart. Naomi grabbed her thermos, locked the car, and walked through the side entrance. The hallway smelled like floor cleaner and recycled air. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The night shift nurses were already gathering their bags, eyes heavy, shoulders low. She didn't clock in first. She never did. She went straight to the ER floor. A child sat on a gurney with a broken wrist, whimpering. His father paced beside him, voice rising, hands shaking. A new nurse stood frozen, clipboard in hand, unsure what to do first. Naomi set down her thermos. She crouched to the child's level, smiled, spoke softly, just loud enough for the boy to hear, not the panic around him. "Hey, I'm Naomi. I'm going to take care of you. Can you wiggle your fingers for me?" The boy wiggled, barely, but enough. She stabilized the wrist in under 2 minutes, calmed the father with 3 sentences, handed the new nurse a step-by-step handoff, and moved on without waiting for a thank you. Down the hall, Dr. Helen Sawyer was mid-stitch on a deep laceration, blood on her gloves, sweat on her forehead. Naomi appeared beside her without being called, tray already prepped, sutures, gauze, antiseptic, lined up like instruments before a concert. Sawyer glanced at her, a small nod, the kind of nod that carried more weight than any compliment. "Don't know what we'd do without you, Naomi." Naomi said nothing, just handed her the next suture. This was St. Edmund Regional, a mid-sized hospital in a southern city that had more patients than beds and more paperwork than staff. Underfunded, overstretched, the kind of place where good nurses burned out in 6 months and great ones lasted a year before leaving for better pay somewhere else. Naomi had been here 14 months. She wasn't leaving. Rita Coleman, the senior charge nurse, met her near the break room. Rita was in her 50s, built like a woman who had spent 22 years telling doctors what they forgot and administrators what they didn't want to hear. She had a pen behind one ear and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. "Morning, baby." "Morning, Rita." Rita lowered her voice. "New administrator started last week. Gerald Crawford. Been walking the floors with a clipboard and a frown. Hasn't introduced himself to a single nurse. Naomi shrugged. As long as he stays out of the ER. Rita gave her a look, the kind that said, "Don't count on it." At that moment, Gerald Crawford stepped onto the ER floor for the first time. Tailored charcoal suit, polished shoes that clicked on the linoleum, a glossy donor brochure tucked under his arm. Beside him walked Brenda Hollins, his assistant, holding a tablet and nodding at everything he said. Behind them, 3 wealthy hospital donors on a guided tour. Crawford scanned the ER. His gaze moved across the nurses, the techs, the orderlies. His jaw tightened. He leaned toward Brenda and whispered, just low enough that he thought no one else could hear. "We need to talk about the face of this department." On the far wall, a small plaque read, St. Edmund Regional Medical Center, a Dawson Health Alliance hospital. Nobody looked at it. Not yet. It happened 2 hours into Naomi's shift. The ER radio crackled to life. Static first, then the dispatcher. Flat, mechanical, the way people sound when they have said terrible things so many times the words stop meaning anything. 2-vehicle collision on Route 9, 2 incoming. First patient, arterial bleed, left femoral, heavy blood loss, ETA 4 minutes. Everything moved at once. Monitors wheeled into position. Curtains ripped back to clear trauma bays. Trays loaded with gauze and hemostats. The hallway filled with squeaking soles and the snap of latex gloves being pulled on fast. Naomi moved before anyone else. She always did. Gloved and standing at Trauma Bay 1 before the supply cart was unlocked. She called out, "Blood type cross-match ordered. Crash cart on standby. 2 large-bore IV lines prepped. O negative on hold." Her voice cut through the noise like a scalpel through skin. Calm, steady, absolute. The ambulance doors blew open with a bang that echoed down the corridor. 2 stretchers crashed through, pushed by paramedics with sweat running down their faces. The first patient was a man in his 40s, construction vest still on, blood soaked through a pressure bandage on his left thigh. Arterial bleed, skin the color of wet concrete. Eyes rolled back, mouth open, moving, making no sound. Naomi was beside him in 3 seconds. She cut the bandage away, applied direct pressure with both hands. Bright red blood pulsed in rhythmic surges, the kind that kills in minutes. She called for a tourniquet without lifting her eyes. Her fingers moved the way they move when they have done this 100 times in worse places, in dust, in darkness, under fire. Blood spread across the white tile. Under the fluorescent lights, it looked almost black. Tourniquets on, bleeding controlled, pulse thready, 2 IVs in and a unit of O negative hanging, right now. The team moved. Because she was right. Because she was the only person in the room whose hands were not shaking. Dr. Sawyer arrived 30 seconds later, gowned. She looked at the tourniquet, at the controlled bleed, at the IVs running. She gave Naomi that nod, the quiet one that said more than a standing ovation. That is when Gerald Crawford walked in. No gloves, no gown, charcoal suit. Donor brochure in one hand, phone in the other. 3 donors stood behind the glass, watching like they had bought tickets to a show. Crawford looked at the blood, then at Naomi, hands red past the wrists, sweat on her forehead, jaw locked. "Step back." Naomi did not move. "I said step back. Let someone qualified handle this." "I am the senior ER nurse on this shift, sir." Crawford tilted his head to the side and looked at her the way someone looks at a stain on an expensive shirt. His lip curled upward. "You? The most senior nurse?" A short, ugly laugh came out of him. Not a real laugh, a weapon shaped like one. "I find that extremely hard to believe. Step aside. Right now. before I have security drag you out of here. Dr. Sawyer moved between them, ice and stone. She is my nurse. She stays. You are not gowned, not gloved, and contaminating my sterile field. Get out. Crawford's eyes moved from Sawyer to Naomi to the donors. His neck muscles went tight. He straightened his tie and walked out. The look he left behind, aimed at Naomi, held long enough to burn, was not anger. It was a promise. The patient survived. Surgery went clean. After everything, Naomi mopped the blood off the floor herself, stripped her gloves, dropped them in the biohazard bin without a word. Rita found her in the break room 20 minutes later, alone, thermos in both hands, eyes on a blank wall. You okay, baby? Fine. Look at me, Naomi. I'm fine, Rita. She was not fine, but she had been pretending for years. The next morning, Crawford struck, 5:45. Same scrubs, same thermos. But Brenda Hollins was planted at the ER door like a checkpoint. Tablet against her chest, a printed memo held out. Face empty, rehearsed, no eye contact. Ms. Turner, effective immediately, you are reassigned from the emergency department, pending competency review. Report to records management, sublevel 1. Naomi read the paper. Once, twice. Temporarily reassigned. Competency review. Sublevel 1. The basement. No windows. No patients. No medicine. Filing cabinets and dust and silence that pressed against your skull. Who authorized this? Mr. Crawford. On what grounds? Brenda's throat moved. Eyes darted sideways. It is all in the memo. She held it out like it burned. Naomi took it, folded it, pocketed it. She did not argue, did not ask to speak with anyone. She turned around, walked past the ER doors she had walked through every morning for 14 months, stepped into the elevator alone, wrote it down in silence, and sat in a cold metal folding chair in a windowless room that smelled of mildew and old cardboard. Her hands shook in her lap. Not weakness, rage, held so deep inside her chest nobody would ever see it. Upstairs, the ER bled without her. The triage line stretched past the waiting room and into the hallway within an hour. Chairs ran out. People stood against the walls holding numbered tickets that nobody was calling. An elderly woman clutching her chest sat for 43 minutes before anyone looked at her. A junior nurse failed an IV stick twice and had to page another floor. A teenager with a dislocated shoulder sobbed in the waiting area while the intake whiteboard filled with names no nurse was assigned to. Dr. Sawyer noticed by noon. She pushed Crawford's door open without knocking. You pulled the best ER nurse in this hospital off my floor. Explain. Crawford sat behind his desk, legs crossed, gold pen rolling between his fingers. A framed photo behind him, himself with a state senator. Competency review. Standard procedure. She saved a man's life yesterday. You watched her do it. What I watched, Crawford said, leaning forward, was a nurse who does not know her place, who showed blatant insubordination in front of 3 of our most important financial donors, and who, frankly, doctor, does not match the image that this department needs to present to the people who keep its lights on. Sawyer heard every word he was not saying. I am filing a complaint with HR. Go ahead. Crawford smiled, thin, bloodless. But I hold full discretion over staffing. HR knows it. The board knows it. Now you know it too. She filed that afternoon. The HR director, new, nervous, still learning which fights to avoid, read it, nodded, and slid the file into a drawer labeled Noted, No Action Required. That evening, Rita walked into Crawford's office, 22 years behind her. She stood and looked him in the eye. Tell me the real reason you pulled Naomi off my floor. Crawford leaned back until the leather squeaked. He studied Rita the way a man studies an appliance he is about to replace. I am restructuring this department to meet donor expectations. The people funding this hospital expect a certain caliber when they walk through those doors. A deliberate pause. If you have a problem with that, maybe your role here does not make sense anymore. Rita held his gaze for 3 seconds, then turned, walked out, closed the door softly. She went straight to her locker, pulled out a manila folder, no label. Inside were printed emails, memos, handwritten dates and names. She had started this file the day Crawford arrived. She sat on the bench, pulled a pen from behind her ear, and wrote down every word he had just said. From memory. Exact. Closed the folder, locked it away. In the basement, Naomi sat under a buzzing fluorescent tube that flickered every few seconds. A ceiling vent rattled above her in a rhythm that never found itself. She stared down the rows of gray filing cabinets, and her mind drifted 10,000 miles away. A rooftop in Kandahar. A night so black she could not see her own fingers. A soldier beside her, leg destroyed below the knee, bone showing through torn uniform, teeth cracking, while rounds slammed the wall inches above their heads. She held that leg together with her bare hands and a ripped strip of fabric, pulled him onto her back, over 200 pounds, and carried him 200 meters to extraction. With shrapnel in her own calf, blood filling her boot with every step. That soldier lived. He made it home to his family. She never told anyone at St. Edmund, not the Bronze Star, not the scar that throbbed when it rained. And now she sat here, in a windowless room, filing dead paper, because Gerald Crawford could not stand the sight of her face in his emergency room. The next 3 days were not about reviewing Naomi's competency. They were about breaking her. Crawford launched a formal investigation. He requested her full personnel file. He called her nursing school in Virginia and demanded official transcripts. He contacted the state licensing board and asked them to verify her credentials, her exam scores, her clinical hours, everything down to the last signature on the last form. He used official letterhead, so every inquiry looked institutional, not personal. Every single result came back clean. Perfect, actually. Naomi's board scores were in the 94th percentile. Her clinical evaluations were spotless. Her license was current with 0 disciplinary marks. Crawford did not care. He filed the results in his desk drawer and kept going. On Wednesday, he reassigned Naomi again. This time, she was pulled out of records management entirely and given a new task: transporting soiled linens from the ER to the laundry facility in the sub-basement. She was issued a gray smock over her scrubs and handed a rolling cart with a squeaky wheel. The woman who had controlled an arterial hemorrhage with her bare hands 4 days earlier was now pushing dirty sheets through the hallway, past the same trauma bay where she had saved a man's life. Crawford made sure she was visible. That was the entire point. He wanted the staff to see her. He wanted every nurse and orderly to understand what happens when someone does not fall in line. Naomi pushed the cart. She did not complain. She did not speak to anyone. She stopped eating lunch in the break room. She started eating alone in the stairwell between sublevel 1 and the ground floor, sitting on the concrete steps with a granola bar and a bottle of water, her back against the cold cinder block wall. Rita noticed. Of course she did. Rita had been watching Crawford like a hawk since his very first week, and what she saw was not a man doing his job. It was a pattern. A methodical, deliberate, repeating pattern aimed at every face in that hospital that did not look like his. 4 employees, all Black or Latino, all targeted within Crawford's first 3 weeks. 2 had already resigned, a radiology technician named Denise Avery and a patient transport aide named Carlos Reyes. Both had received the same treatment Naomi was getting now. Competency reviews with no basis, reassignments to humiliating tasks, public corrections for infractions that white employees committed daily without a word. Rita documented all of it. Dates, names, direct quotes. She kept the folder locked in her locker and added to it every night after her shift ended. The folder was getting thick. On Thursday morning, the breaking point arrived. Naomi was restocking a supply closet on the ER floor, the one task that still brought her within 30 feet of actual patient care. The supply manager had sent her there. It was on her schedule. She was doing exactly what she had been told to do. Crawford found her there. He appeared in the doorway like a shadow, arms folded, face tight. Behind him, 2 nurses and an orderly had stopped what they were doing, watching. "What are you doing on this floor?" Naomi did not turn around. She placed a box of sterile gloves on the shelf and answered with her back to him. "Supply restock. I was sent by the supply manager." "I do not care who sent you." Crawford's voice rose. Not shouting. Worse than shouting. Controlled, theatrical, performed for the audience standing behind him. "When I tell you that you are not permitted on this floor, that means you are not permitted on this floor. You do not get to sneak back in here under some excuse. Do you understand me?" Naomi turned around. Her eyes were steady, but something behind them had shifted. Something barely held. "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because I am starting to wonder if you are even capable of following basic instructions. Maybe the problem is not your credentials. Maybe the problem is you." Silence. The hallway behind Crawford had gone completely still. The 2 nurses stared at the floor. The orderly looked away. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Naomi said nothing. She set down the box she was holding, stepped past Crawford without making contact, and walked toward the elevator. The doors closed in front of her face. And then, only when she was alone, she let out one long, shaking breath through her clenched teeth. Dr. Sawyer watched the entire thing from the nurse's station 20 feet away. She gripped the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles went white. That night, Sawyer went home and opened Naomi's personnel file on her laptop. She had saved a digital copy weeks ago. She scrolled past the nursing credentials, past the clinical reviews, past the reference letters, and stopped on a single page she had only glanced at once before. A commendation letter. United States Army. Bronze Star with Valor. The citation was brief, clinical, military language stripped of drama. But the facts it contained were staggering. Staff Sergeant Naomi Turner, 68 Whiskey, combat medic, 2 tours, Kandahar Province. Under direct enemy fire, sustained shrapnel wounds to the right lower leg while providing emergency trauma care to 6 wounded soldiers. Carried 1 critically wounded officer, Captain Elliot Dawson, approximately 200 meters across exposed terrain to the evacuation point. Sawyer read the name again. Captain Elliot Dawson. She opened a browser, typed the name in. The results loaded in under 2 seconds. Elliot Dawson, chairman of Dawson Health Alliance, owner of 14 hospitals across the United States, one of the most influential figures in American healthcare. Forbes profile, CNN interviews, a face she had seen on the hospital's website, but never connected to a soldier in Kandahar. And then she saw it. On the Dawson Health Alliance website, the full list of affiliated hospitals. St. Edmund Regional Medical Center. Sawyer's hands stopped moving on the keyboard. Her mouth went dry. The man Naomi had carried through gunfire, the man whose life she saved with shrapnel buried in her own leg, owned this hospital. He owned the building. He signed the paychecks. He was Gerald Crawford's boss, and neither he nor Naomi had any idea the other was connected to this place. Sawyer closed the laptop. She sat in the quiet of her kitchen for a full minute, staring at the dark screen. Then she picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed. 3 rings. A voice answered, calm, professional, guarded. "This is Elliot Dawson." Sawyer introduced herself, explained that she was calling about a former combat medic who had served with him in Afghanistan, a woman named Naomi Turner. There was a long silence on the other end, the kind that carries weight. "Naomi Turner," Dawson repeated. His voice changed. Something cracked open behind it. "What about her? Is she all right?" Sawyer told him everything. The reassignment, the humiliation, the soiled linens, the supply closet, the termination meeting Crawford had scheduled for Friday morning. She told him the name of the hospital. The silence that followed was different, heavier, darker. "You said St. Edmund Regional." Dawson's voice had gone flat. "Dangerous." "Naomi Turner is working at my hospital, and I did not know." Sawyer's breath caught. "Your hospital?" "I own it. St. Edmund is part of Dawson Health Alliance. I built that entire system because of what happened to me in Kandahar." A long pause. "Because of what she did for me in Kandahar." When Dawson spoke again, his voice was not emotional. It was operational, military, the voice of a man who had already decided everything. "I am activating my legal team tonight. I want a full internal audit on Gerald Crawford, every email, every memo, every personnel action he has taken, pulled and compiled within 24 hours. I want that report on my desk before I land." "Before you land?" "I am coming to St. Edmund, personally, and I am not coming alone." He paused. "Do not tell Crawford. Do not tell anyone. I want to see exactly what this man has built inside my hospital with my name on the wall." Dawson hung up. Sawyer sat in her kitchen holding a dead phone, staring at the wall. Within the hour, Dawson made 6 more calls. Sergeant Luis Vega picked up on the first ring. 3 other members of the Kandahar squad confirmed within minutes. All of them in. All of them coming. Back at St. Edmund, Crawford was in his office, composing a formal termination recommendation for the board. The document was 3 pages. It cited insubordination, failure to meet competency standards, and conduct unbecoming of a medical professional. He printed it, signed it with his gold pen, and placed it in a crisp folder for the board meeting at 9 o'clock Friday morning. He leaned back in his chair, laced his fingers behind his head, and smiled. A satisfied, final smile. On Friday, Naomi Turner would be erased from his hospital for good. He was absolutely certain of that. Friday morning, 8:41. Naomi sat in the basement under the same flickering fluorescent light, same cold chair, same gray filing cabinets. But today there was a piece of paper on the table in front of her that she had not been given by anyone. She had written it herself. A resignation letter. 2 paragraphs, polite, no emotion. She would rather walk out on her own feet than be dragged out on someone else's terms. She folded it and waited for 9 o'clock. Upstairs, Gerald Crawford arrived at 8:45, suit pressed, tie straight, folder in hand. The termination documents, 3 pages, signed and ready. He walked through the lobby like a man who had already won. Checked his watch. 15 minutes. At 8:52, 3 black SUVs pulled into the hospital parking lot. They pulled directly to the front entrance. Engines cut. Doors opened in unison. From the lead vehicle stepped Elliot Dawson, 3-piece charcoal suit. Beside him, the chief legal counsel of Dawson Health Alliance, carrying a leather portfolio. From the other vehicles, Sergeant Luis Vega, then 6 more, all in Army dress uniforms, dark blue jackets, gold buttons, medals across their chests, back straight, faces stone. Dawson walked through the front doors of St. Edmund Regional, his hospital, his name on the wall. The lobby went silent. The receptionist stopped typing. A patient in a wheelchair turned. 2 nurses froze mid-step. The security guard stood slowly, unsure what he was seeing. Dawson walked straight to the reception counter. His voice was calm, clear, the kind of voice that does not need volume to fill a room. "I am here for Naomi Turner." The receptionist blinked. Let me check which department she is. Sublevel 1, Records Management. Call her up. The receptionist reached for the phone, but before she could dial, footsteps came from the east hallway. Fast, sharp, the click of expensive shoes on polished tile. Gerald Crawford appeared around the corner. His eyes swept the lobby. SUVs through the glass, soldiers in formation, a man in a suit he did not recognize. Confusion hit first, then alarm. He straightened his jacket and walked toward Dawson, hand extended, smile already in place. "Good morning. I am Gerald Crawford, hospital administrator. This is quite an unexpected visit. Whatever this is, I would be happy to—" Dawson did not take his hand, did not look at it. He looked past it, directly into Crawford's eyes. "Bring Naomi Turner up here. Now." Crawford's smile cracked at the edges. His extended hand hung in the air for a beat too long before he pulled it back. "Sir, Miss Turner is currently under a competency review. I do not think this is the appropriate time to—" "I did not ask what you think." Dawson's voice did not rise. It dropped, lower, harder, like a door closing on something permanent. "I said bring her up. Right now." Crawford opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the soldiers, looked at the legal counsel, looked at the receptionist who was already dialing sublevel 1. 3 minutes later, the elevator chimed. The doors opened. Naomi Turner stepped out into the lobby. Gray smock over her scrubs, lanyard around her neck. In her right hand, folded in half, her resignation letter. She took 2 steps into the lobby and stopped. She saw the uniforms first, the dark blue jackets and the gold buttons. Then she saw Vega, older now, thicker in the shoulders, but the same face she had last seen covered in dust and blood on a rooftop in Kandahar. Then she saw Dawson. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her hand tightened on the folded letter until the paper crumpled. Dawson stepped forward. He straightened his spine, locked his heels together, and raised his right hand to his brow in a slow, precise military salute. Behind him, Vega snapped to attention and saluted. Then the next soldier, and the next, and the next. 7 soldiers in full dress uniform, standing in the lobby of a hospital, saluting a woman in a gray smock. Vega's voice rang through the marble lobby like a bell. "Staff Sergeant Naomi Turner, combat medic, 68 Whiskey, Bronze Star with Valor." Naomi's eyes filled. Her chin trembled, but she did not cry. She stood at attention, muscle memory pulling her spine straight before her mind could catch up, and returned the salute. Dawson broke formation. He stepped to her and took both her hands. "I looked for you, Naomi. After I got out, I looked. I could not find you." His voice was low, just for her. "You saved my life in Kandahar. You carried me when I could not walk. And then you disappeared. And this whole time, you were here, in my hospital, and I did not know." He turned toward Crawford, Every trace of warmth left his face. The termination meeting is canceled. Effective immediately, I am convening an internal hearing on Gerald Crawford. Right now, in the boardroom. Crawford's face had gone the color of old chalk. His lips moved, but nothing came out. His legs did not seem to know what to do. The folder in his hand, the one with Naomi's termination papers, slipped from his fingers and hit the floor. The pages fanned out across the tile. Nobody picked them up. The boardroom on the second floor had been set up for one meeting. It was about to host a very different one. Elliot Dawson sat at the head of the table, his legal counsel to his right. 5 board members sat in stunned silence along both sides, still processing what they had witnessed in the lobby downstairs. Crawford sat at the far end, his hands flat on the table, not steady. Dawson opened a leather folder. Inside was the report his legal team had compiled overnight. Every email, every memo, every personnel action Crawford had signed. In the past 22 days, Dawson began, his voice measured and flat. This man has initiated disciplinary action against 4 employees. Every single one of them was Black or Latino. 2 were forced to resign. A third was reassigned to janitorial duties, despite having no performance complaints, no disciplinary history, and credentials that exceed those of any other nurse in this building. He laid the printed emails on the table, one by one, slowly, like dealing cards. These are internal emails sent by Mr. Crawford to his assistant, Brenda Hollins. I will read from them directly. Dawson picked up the first page. We need to rebalance the floor. The ER does not reflect the caliber our donors expect. I want a different look by the end of the quarter. The room was silent. One board member closed her eyes. Then the door opened. Rita Coleman walked in. She had not been invited. She did not wait to be. She placed a manila folder on the table in front of Dawson. No label. Thick with documents. I have been keeping records since his first day, Rita said. Dates, names, direct quotes. Every employee he targeted. Every conversation I witnessed. She looked at Crawford. Every word. Dawson opened Rita's folder. He compared it to his legal team's report. Page by page. The dates matched. The names matched. The quotes matched. 2 independent sources, one from the inside, one from the outside, telling the exact same story. Crawford watched his own words being read back to him from 2 separate documents. His face shifted from pale to gray. This is being taken out of context, he said. His voice had lost its authority. It came out thin, pressed. I was restructuring the department, aligning it with corporate standards. Everything I did was within my administrative discretion. Your administrative discretion, Dawson repeated the words slowly. He let them hang in the air. Then he leaned forward. I wrote those standards, Mr. Crawford. I built this system. I created the corporate framework you are citing as your defense. His voice dropped to something quiet and final. And there is not a single line, not one sentence, not one word in any document I have ever written that says the color of a person's skin is a measure of their professional caliber. Crawford's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You are terminated. Effective immediately. Dawson nodded to the head of hospital security, who had been standing by the door since the hearing began. The guard stepped forward. Crawford's hospital badge was unclipped from his jacket. His laptop was collected. Access credentials revoked. Brenda Hollins was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Crawford was escorted down the corridor, through the lobby, toward the exit. His suit, pressed that morning for his victory meeting, now hung on him like it belonged to someone else. In the lobby, the soldiers were still standing. Crawford had to walk past them to reach the door. 7 men in dress uniforms, medals catching the overhead light, standing at parade rest. They did not move. They did not speak. They did not blink. They simply watched him walk past, every single one of them. Dawson's voice followed him from 20 feet behind. Quiet. Not for the crowd, just loud enough for Crawford to hear. You should have asked her name before you tried to erase it. Crawford pushed through the glass doors and walked into the parking lot, alone. Back inside, Dawson turned to the board chairwoman. Reinstate Naomi Turner to her full position in the emergency department, effective immediately, with a formal written apology from this institution. The chairwoman nodded. Done. Dawson looked across the lobby to where Naomi stood, still in her gray smock, still holding that crumpled resignation letter she would never need to use. Rita was already beside her, one arm around her shoulder, holding on tight. The story left the hospital before Crawford's car left the parking lot. A bystander, a patient's daughter sitting in the waiting area with her phone, had recorded the entire lobby scene. The soldiers marching in, the salutes, Vega's voice calling out Naomi's rank and commendation, Dawson embracing her, Crawford standing frozen with his mouth open and his folder on the floor. The video was uploaded before noon. By 3 o'clock, it had 400,000 views. By evening, it had crossed 2 million. Angela Moore, a journalist at the local NBC affiliate, was the first to call the hospital. She had been covering healthcare disparities in the region for 2 years. This story landed on her desk like a gift wrapped in outrage. Her segment aired that night at 6 and again at 10. The headline ran across the bottom of the screen in white letters on a red bar. Combat medic banned from ER. Hospital owner discovers she saved his life. The station's phone lines did not stop ringing until midnight. By the next morning, every major network had picked it up. CNN, MSNBC, ABC. The story was not just about a nurse being mistreated. It was about a decorated war hero being humiliated inside a hospital owned by the very man she had carried off a battlefield. The irony was too sharp to ignore. The footage was too powerful to look away from. Dawson did not hide. He went on CNN that same week. He sat across from the anchor in a dark suit and said what no executive in his position was expected to say. I built 14 hospitals because a woman saved my life in Kandahar. She carried me 200 meters through open ground with shrapnel in her own leg. And my own system, the system I created, nearly destroyed her. That is my failure. I am here to own it. The clip was replayed tens of thousands of times. It trended on every platform within hours. The comment sections flooded with veterans, nurses, and people who had never shared a news clip in their lives. The State Department of Health launched a formal investigation into St. Edmund Regional within the week. Investigators pulled every personnel file Crawford had touched. What they found confirmed everything Rita's folder and Dawson's audit had already revealed, and then some. Falsified performance reviews, fabricated competency complaints, 4 employees of color targeted in 22 days, 2 forced to resign under pressure. Internal emails containing language that no HR training in the world could explain away. And buried in Crawford's previous employment history, a separation agreement from a hospital in another state, sealed with a non-disclosure agreement. Same pattern, same complaints, same quiet exit designed to let the problem move somewhere else instead of solving it. Investigative reporters found the NDA. They could not publish its contents, but they published its existence. That was enough. The public understood. Naomi retained a civil rights attorney, a woman named Sandra Wells, who took the case pro bono the morning after the video went viral. Within 2 weeks, a federal civil rights lawsuit was filed under Title VII against Gerald Crawford and St. Edmund Regional Medical Center. Rita Coleman joined as a co-plaintiff. So did Denise Avery and Carlos Reyes, the two employees Crawford had already forced out. The trial took place 4 months later in a federal courthouse downtown. The gallery was full every day. Veterans sat in the front row, wearing unit patches and service caps. Reporters filled the back. Crawford took the stand on the third day. He wore a navy suit and a red tie, an attempt to look composed and patriotic. His attorney had coached him for hours. Stay calm, stay corporate, deny intent, do not lose your temper. It lasted 12 minutes before the plaintiff's counsel broke through. She read his own emails back to him, one by one. The same emails Dawson had laid on the boardroom table, but now entered into federal record, projected on a screen for the jury to read along. We need to rebalance the floor. The ER does not reflect the caliber our donors expect. I want a different look by the end of the quarter. What did you mean by a different look, Mr. Crawford? Crawford shifted in his seat. I was referring to professional appearance, uniforms, presentation. 4 employees, all people of color, all disciplined or removed within 3 weeks. And you are telling this jury that a different look referred to uniforms? Crawford did not answer. His mouth moved slightly, but no words formed. The jury watched him. They did not need him to speak. His silence said everything. Expert witnesses testified on patterns of systemic discrimination in healthcare administration. Statistical analysis showed that Crawford's disciplinary actions at St. Edmund were 11 times more likely to target non-white employees than white ones. 11 times. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours. They returned a unanimous verdict in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. Crawford was ordered to pay significant damages. The hospital reached a separate settlement that included systemic reforms, mandatory bias training across all departments, an independent oversight committee with community representation, a formal public apology issued by the board, and the establishment of an anonymous reporting hotline for staff. The state licensing board acted next. Crawford's hospital administrator license was permanently revoked. He was barred from working in healthcare administration in any capacity. His case was entered into the National Disciplinary Database, flagged so that no hospital, no clinic, no medical facility anywhere in the country could hire him without seeing exactly what he had done and exactly what it had cost. Dawson did not stop at St. Edmund. He ordered a full personnel audit across all 14 Dawson Health Alliance hospitals. Every staffing decision from the previous 2 years was reviewed. An independent oversight board was installed at the corporate level. A new policy required that any employee reassignment or termination be reviewed by a panel before taking effect. Never again by a single administrator acting alone. He established the Naomi Turner Scholarship Fund, a national program providing tuition and mentorship for military veterans transitioning into healthcare careers. The fund launched with an initial endowment large enough to support 40 scholarships in its first year. At a press conference announcing the fund, a reporter asked Dawson why he named it after Naomi. He paused, looked at the microphone, then looked past it. Because she never asked for any of this. She never wanted recognition. She just wanted to help people. And that is exactly the kind of person we need more of. 6 months later, the ER at St. Edmund Regional looked different. Not because of the walls, or the equipment, or the fluorescent lights that still buzzed overhead. It looked different because of what was no longer missing. Naomi Turner was back on the floor, full-time, promoted to assistant nurse manager, a title she never asked for, but everyone agreed she had earned 10 times over. On the nurse's station counter, tucked between the monitor and the hand sanitizer dispenser, there was a small framed photograph. 6 soldiers in dusty fatigues standing in front of a mud-colored wall, mountains behind them. Naomi in the center, younger, thinner, a medical bag over one shoulder. New residents always noticed it. They always asked. Naomi would glance at the photo, give a small nod, and say, "That was a long time ago." Then she would go back to work. Rita Coleman retired 3 months after the trial ended. On her last day, she walked into the new Oversight Committee's office, set her manila folder on the chairperson's desk, and said 5 words. "Do not let this happen again." Then she clocked out for the last time, hung up her lanyard, and drove home. Dr. Helen Sawyer stayed. She continued running the ER with the same precision and the same impatience she had always carried. In her office, taped to the wall beside her diplomas, was a printed copy of the Bronze Star citation. Not for herself, for every new resident who walked in, sat down, and needed to understand what the word qualified actually means. Elliot Dawson returned to Washington after the trial. He continued running Dawson Health Alliance. But something had changed. In interviews, in board meetings, in quiet conversations, he no longer talked about growth first. He talked about people. Every year, on the anniversary of the night in Kandahar, he sent Naomi a message. The same message. 4 words. "Still breathing because of you." Naomi never replied with more than 2. "Always will." Before he left St. Edmund that Friday, Dawson had offered Naomi a position, director of a new national training program for veterans entering healthcare. Corner office, 6-figure salary, her name on the door. Naomi turned it down. "I do not need a corner office," she said. "I need to save people. That is what I know how to do. That is where I belong." Dawson smiled, a real one, the kind that reaches the eyes. "That is exactly why you are better than me." Gerald Crawford disappeared from public life. No interviews, no public statements, no social media presence. Last anyone heard, he was working at a private insurance consulting firm 3 states away, far from any hospital, any patient, any nurse's station. Nobody asked about him. Nobody needed to. On a Tuesday evening, 8 months after the soldiers walked through those lobby doors, Naomi finished a 12-hour shift. She peeled off her gloves, washed her hands, hung up her stethoscope, grabbed her thermos, same one, still dented, and walked through the side exit into the parking lot. She stopped beside her car, turned around, looked back at the hospital. The ER lights glowed amber through the second-floor windows. Inside, monitors beeped. Nurses moved between curtains. Someone, somewhere, was being helped by someone who cared enough to show up. Naomi exhaled, long and slow. Then she got in her car and drove home. If this story hit you, drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever watched someone's worth be dismissed because of the way they looked? Have you ever been that person? If you know a nurse, a veteran, or anyone who has spent their life fighting to be seen, share this with them. They need to hear it. Like, subscribe, hit that bell. Because stories like this need to be told, and I am not stopping. Your uniform does not define your worth, but the people who show up when it matters, they define everything.
Listen, some people save lives and never tell anyone. They show up early, they stay late, they do the hardest work in the room, and they never ask for a thank you, never ask for credit, never ask to be seen. They just do it quietly every single day, and the world walks right past them. Worst, sometimes the world looks right at them and decide they are nothing because of the uniform, because of the job title, because of what's on the outside instead of what's on the inside. But let me tell you something. The person you just met, the one you think doesn't matter, you have no idea what they've done, what they've survived, what they've carried, what they've sacrificed so that someone else could keep breathing. So before you decide someone is beneath you, stop. You don't know their story, you don't know their scars, you don't know what they're capable of, and by the time you find out, it might be too late to take back what you've said. Like, share and subscribe real stories, real justice every week. And remember, your uniform doesn't define your worth, but how you treat the person wearing one defines yours.